Hello guys, I'm Super Ron, welcome back to the channel, and we're here again at AUTOSHACK for another awesome automotive episode. This week we've got a bit of new school, a bit of older school, and some very old school on the ramp. My first job today is this C6 Avant. I'm a big fan of big Audis and they do look especially cool in white. I used to have an A4 3-litre Quattro in the white as an Avant as a super cool daily car. This is one of our regular customers and fellow YouTuber Nathan White's daily. It's a super high spec A6. He's already fitted the 20-inch RS6 alloys and now we're going to give it a subtle little drop on some H&R springs, and he's got drilled and grooved discs to go all the way around just to smarten it up. We've also got this Mercedes convertible. I had to do some welding for some rust repairs on. And then Lee's done the bodywork and resprayed the whole rear end, so that is looking as good as new. And then we've got this stunning, genuine 930 turbo on the ramp for a bit of a recommission and a service, and just saw a few little niggly jobs for the customer. But first off, let's get this Audi on the ramp.
So here's the complex Audi suspension they have on the front, a full multi-link setup. And a real troublesome problem on these is this top pinch bolt. It's an aluminium leg, a steel bolt, and it goes all the way through here to the nut this side. It's got an open for a clamp this side and one the other side, and these just corrode up. So you try and undo it here and it just snaps inside, which is a bad day. We're trying to avoid touching these as much as possible because they are just a nightmare. So what you can do sometimes is disconnect it from the inside, but as you can see up there, you can't do it on these because you can't get the bolt out because it'll hit the turret. So you have to get a little bit creative because we avoid at all costs trying to get this pinch bolt out, because if it snaps, that'll turn this into an all-day job. So let's get creative and drop the top off. We've got these H&R springs to go on to make it sit a bit lower. It needs new discs and pads. So we've got these M-Tech ones to go on, drilled and grooved. So it can look a bit nicer than this old stuff. As you can see, you can't get these bolts out because they hit the turret. Even worse on this one, you can't move that one at all. So you have to drop the triangle slightly, take them out, and then you can drop the strut off. One out, two out, and then wiggle in, the strut comes out. So the new spring is in and up. As you saw, I disconnected the arms from the inners so we didn't have to touch this pinch bolt. So we've just got to put the rest of this back up. Then you do the bolts up at ride height so it doesn't ring off the bushes. So there's a little bit of a faff. But anyone that's ever done these Audis before knows how much of a big faff it is if those pinch bolts snap. So 3 more corners.
That's the rears all on. Springs are a bit of a tight squeeze to get in there, but with a bit of persuasion they popped in. So onto the fronts. And fronts all back on and in. Front discs on, wasn't too bad to do. Just had to drill one screw out because it wouldn't undo on the brake disc. All in, ready to go back on the floor. So that's this one down on the ground, no expensive fatalities with those pinch bolts, we're all back together, so he's going to be super happy with that. So next up, let's go and have a look at this Porsche. So this is a 1987 genuine Porsche 911 930 Turbo. This is a new customer of ours and he's recommended by one of our other customers who look after his classic 911, and he's recommended to bring this into us to look after, give it a check over. He's actually had this for about 7 years, but he hasn't used it very much at all. So it's come in for a light recommission and a full service and just a general check over. And he bought it direct from Texas in America. He bought it on auction and he said the pictures were of a classic Texas ranch with the Porsche sitting there. It just had a full engine rebuild. He said it was a bit of a gamble, a bit of a risk, but it's come over and this is an absolute stunning example. We've had a look all the way around and it all looked completely original. All the paintwork is perfect. And being from a hot climate like Texas, there's no rust underneath at all. Even the suspension components, everything that's metal is just in perfect condition. So I've given it a good look over and I've got a little list of jobs we need to do. We do look after a lot of these classic 80s 911s, SCs and Carreras and things like this. But for me, this is the first turbo I've worked on and it's really cool seeing all the upgrades that Porsche put on compared to a standard one. It's got loads of extra coolers. The brakes are absolutely ginormous. It's got extra little vents and hidden little things that, because I've worked on other 911 SCs, you can see the difference between the two. Like I said, it's in absolutely stunning condition underneath. It had a full engine rebuild in America and super rare for one of these not to leak, but this one is mint underneath. All the floor pan, there's no signs of any accident damage. Everything looks completely original everywhere. Got this extra cooler here, which we don't normally see on these Porsches. You've still got the normal oil cooler and the big oil lines that run all the way down. Because remember, these are air cooled, or as Porsche like to call them, oil cooled. It's got a cool little exhaust system. These 930s have a huge external wastegate for the turbo. And it's even got its own little screamer pipe with a silencer. Being an American car, I'm not sure whether this one would have had a cat and everything as standard or whether that's just California cars, but this is stunning. There's a turbo tucked up there, but I reckon these are quite a handful. Being the US-SPEC, it's got the huge rear overriders on the bumper, which look a bit funny compared to our European models. It's got the huge turbo whale tail on the back. It's got this little weird brake light on the top. I don't know if that's a US thing or an aftermarket thing. Looks a bit strange, but underneath the engine bay is full up. You've got the big intercooler on the top, which comes down to the functional turbo spoiler. And I think this is the aircon radiator, and that actually goes up and down with the boot. So the pipes run down there, and that goes through the vent there. So lots of cool things like that I haven't seen on these 911s before. It's still mechanical fuel injection. We've got to do a full service on it. So it's going to be interesting getting down to the spark plugs on this side. But it is a stunning car. When the lights are on, it's got like the side markers, the US-SPEC. I thought these had huge overriders on the front, but this one doesn't seem to. Looks just the same as our UK models. But the wide arches just look amazing. We've got all genuine Porsche stuff to service it up with, and we're probably going to put some new tyres on it as well. We took these ones off, and although the tread all looks good on them, they look nearly brand new. In fact, they've still got the dimples down the side. They're actually date stamped 2008, so the tyres are 13 years old, so we're going to recommend to put new ones on them, something with a bit more quality. And the brakes are massive. You can see they're so wide. They still fit under 16-inch wheels. But compared to what we normally see on these are massive. Another little strange thing I saw, we've got this extra cooler at the front, which I'm not sure what it's for, but it looks like it just goes straight up against the floor, which I thought was strange, because there's no vent at the front. But then when I opened the bonnet, and we looked under here, the tank all looks normal, but it's got this little blower that actually sucks air from the front and blows it through into that cooler, whatever it might be for. So that'll be interesting to investigate. And here's the paintwork Lee's done on this Mercedes. We've painted the whole rear end, but just little repairs, little bits of rust. So this looks absolutely stunning now. Just got to finish it off, give it a little polish up, and that'll be going back to the customer. So let's get some servicing done on this Porsche. I've been making myself a little bit of space, but it is still Ramo in here. This is all old school technology. It's still on mechanical fuel injection. You've still got a metering head, all the mechanical injection lines there. And also, just spotted at the back, it's had an ignition upgrade. So it's not on the standard Porsche ignition module. They've upgraded to the MSD for the spark. But it's all old school mechanical pressure sensors, T's for the fuel, loads of really, really cool stuff. But we can almost get down to the spark plugs now. Got a bit of room down there, some room down there. Let's carry on. Oh man, I've just seen that I've got an SD card error, so it's just lost all the footage of the job I've just done, which is a bit of a bummer because it was quite an awesome one. As this car is an import, it didn't have any rear fog lights, and what we see time and time again with imports is the importer just wants it done quick as possible, just chucks a switch under the dash somewhere, normally has one hanging out from the bottom, job done, passes the MOT. And on this one, it was done particularly bad. Just had one loose wire running all the way underneath the car. It was wrapped around the heat exchange cables, kind of draped over the drive shaft, cable tied here and there, and it's just a bright red wire running from the front to the back. Just looked a mess. This has got the inbuilt fog lights in the rear, which I hadn't seen before. I'd only seen ones down at the bottom by the exhaust, so I don't know if they were added on at a later date. And then there was just a universal switch hanging out under the dash, and that was scotch locked into the dip beam feed, so that ran the rear fogs. Not ideal. What I did notice in the center console, you had the front fog lights, which were factory on this car, and then there was a blank in the middle, and then the cigarette lighter on the other side. So I thought I'd use that blank. So then we ordered a genuine Porsche rear fog light switch to go in there, and I was just going to wire it in a bit nicer to the rear. But what I found when I got to the back of where the switch goes in, all the wiring was actually still there in the original Porsche loom. So you have to go in through the bonnet to get to the back of the switches of the dash, and taped up on the side was all the plugs for a rear fog light switch. So the car was actually equipped with the full wiring for rear fogs, and it went all the way to the back. And where it stopped, just the little plug where it normally goes out to the rear light. I think there's 8 terminals on the car side on the plug, and only 7 on the light side, so I just added into that wire and wired it up to the rear fogs. So now it all works as factory. And we got rid of this horrendous bird's nest and the universal, and that's just hanging underneath the dashboard just for MOT time. But now we've got the proper front and rear fog light switches. And all installed, just plug straight in. So we've got 2 fog lights and the cigarette lighter. Now let's put all the heaters back in. So that's the heaters all back in, all back together. Just got the carpet to go back down. Lights are on. Just on the side lights. With of course the cool US side markers. Go into our factory Porsche switches. Front lights on, rear's on. And fully functioning factory fitment rear fog lights. And even better, we've got rid of all this junk that was hanging around inside and the dodgy switch. So we didn't need any wires, all the Porsche wiring was just there. Just needed to plug in the new switch and wire into the rear plug. So that's how easy it is and how it should have been done the first time. And it is down on the floor. We managed to source some brand new tyres. We've got Pirelli P0s, much more period correct for this car. Managed to find the 245 45 16s for the rear. So they're looking a lot better. And we also managed to source matching ones for the front. It's a bit of a weird size. They're 205 55 16s, And would you believe the only place we could get the P0s from was Asda tyres. So they came through next day. I've bled all the brakes, done a flush through with that, sorted the front number plate mount because it still had the US mount on there with a UK number plate. Got all the side markers, got all the interior back in, done all the checks. So all that is left is to take this puppy out for a test drive. So with these old 911s, they're dry sump and they've got a separate oil tank, so you have to actually take them for a drive, get them fully up to temperature before you can check the oil level, which is a shame, hey? We look after quite a few of these old classic 911s, and I must admit, I'm not the greatest fan. They're quite awkward to drive. The clutch and brake pedals are pivoted from the bottom and the accelerator's pivoted from the top, and it's just a bit awkward to move your feet around, and the pedals are offset. So I'm quite interested to see how the wide track of the turbo, straight away I can feel the brakes are so much better than any of the other 911s that we've had in so far. Those chunky massive discs and huge calipers really do their job. But the disappointing thing I mainly find with those other 911s is they're just not that fast, they just kind of clonk along. So I'm really interested to see how much difference the turbo does with the wider track, bigger brakes, and of course that turbo. Now these are called the original Widowmaker because it's such an old school technology. We've got mechanical fuel injection, we've got no ABS, no traction control, no power steering. It's just 3 pedals and a steering wheel and turbo lag, full boost. Which is why most of these ended up turning around. And this one drives really nice and straight. Straight away I can see the brakes are a massive improvement over the usual ones we look after here. It just brakes like a modern car. So we've got a bit of temperature in, all the gauges are reading fine. Woo. Straight away I can tell you that turbo makes a massive difference. That is a huge difference compared to the normal Carreras that we drive here. I actually really like this one. It doesn't squirm, thanks to those brand new Pirelli P0s, it sticks to the road. We're on a nice dry day here. But I can definitely see people getting in trouble on a wet day with one of these. So I think that's going to wrap up this episode. We've got the Audi A6 all nice and low, but still nice and comfy for a daily driver. We've got this one all serviced, it's running fantastic now. So we're going to have 2 very, very happy customers. Make sure you subscribe for lots more really exciting cars like this. But until next time, make sure you have fun.